Give us any chance, we'll take it. Read us any rule, we'll break it. We're gonna make our dreams come true.
Welcome to Night After Night, a podcast about 8 seasons in a row. I'm Lisa Fernandez, and
I'm Chris Wardner. Hello.
we're about to review How's Your Sister, directed by Tom Trubovich. Hi, Tom Trubovich, for the millionth time. We're going to hear his name a whole lot from here on out, because he directed the whole end of the series.
Yeah. I just a quick note. I have actually pretty much tapped out on Trubovich trivia and background, so I'm going to save my last little portion of the discussion, I think, for the final episode, I think.
Yeah, he did some human work on this season. We gotta give him credit, especially since he was basically pretty much learning on the job. Like Gary Marshall's behest, Gary Marshall pretty much put him in there, and he learned how to do things right there on the sets, which Penny Marshall made fun of him for at one point. In the bloopers, you have seen that blooper, correct?
I have.
From where she was supposed to be mock ironing her dress from An Affair to Forget.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
And she's like making fun of him for not calling action or cut. It's like, so poor Tom had to learn on the spot, and we gotta give him some respect for trying hard. So good on him, and good on him for continuing to build a career.
But yeah, so this is who wrote this episode? This is a Roger Garrett episode. Yeah.
Yes, it was a Roger Garrett episode, which is interesting. We know that David and Michael had a preference for Roger Garrett when he wrote for The Boys. And this is Garrett's last hurrah, and it is a Squiggy-centered episode, so to speak.
Yep.
And here is what the episode is about. Squiggy's lookalike department store buyer sister, Squendolyn, has arrived in California from New Jersey to lick her wounds after breaking up with her old man, Arnie. Squiggy bribes a hard-up-for-cash Carmine to show his sister a good time in town. Unfortunately, Squendolyn takes Carmine's solicitousness as an excuse for sex and flirtation, believing that he has a crush on her. They're invited to attend the party by Rhonda, and every woman in the place throws herself at Carmine. Squendolyn immediately catches him in the act of flirty dancing, then learns about the bet, leaving Carmine looking like a jerk. Can he redeem himself in her eyes and perhaps appreciate something other than a pretty face? Elsewhere, with Lenny's apparent wet dreams making Squendolyn stay at the boys' place an impossibility, Squiggy begs Laverne to let Squendolyn bunk with her. So what'd you think of this one?
Well, that was disappointing.
For me, it's like, why would you craft an episode about Carmine that is so negative when you're this close to running a spin-off about him?
Yeah, and this is a weird one. I have a suspicion this was a script that was kind of like some of the other scripts that are around in season 8. They feel like episodes they sort of had in the back burner, and they kind of bring them up and sort of touch them up a bit for this season, because Carmine's behavior here, this is more like him in season 2 and 3, in my opinion.
Yeah. And this is not a good or flattering portrait of Carmine.
It is not.
And the weird thing is he spends the entire end portion of the series being sympathetic and being a worthy hero. And here he is a shallow jerk until he realizes, oh wow, dating a girl who wasn't traditionally attractive made me a better man. Okay, Carmine.
And it's a really weird, it's such a weird cap to the episode that feels like this is the message we're trying to send. And then in a sense, they punish him for it at the end.
Yeah. The entire episode is apparently about Carmine Ragusa being hated by God.
Which...
That is his thesis.
Which, listen, if you're going to do a Carmine bad luck thing, you gotta, like, that would have been a better setup for the chain letter episube we got, for Jinxed,
Jinxed, yeah.
By the way, as those of you who have listened to this podcast for such a long time, I hope that you will know that I personally, Chris, was somebody who was very against Carmine for a very, 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 very long time, to the chagrin of even some of our listeners. I will say that I have grown to like him, especially more and more through like seasons 6, 7, and 8. And, I actually think he's one of the strongest parts of season 8. This episode, I have a total of 9 fuck you Carmine notes, where that's just a slug line in a script. It's just fuck you Carmine. And I made sure to keep count. When you watch this episode, though, there are a lot of reasons for this. We'll start going through these a little bit in sequence, but it's a bizarre one.
Yeah.
And it's sad because there is some really good stuff in there.
Yeah.
The bit where Carmine still is dressed as the doctor because he's still doing the singing telegram thing.
Yep.
And as long as you're dressed like that, I'm gonna go back in the kitchen. My cook says he's got has a doctor's note, says he can't work, but I'm gonna tell him I just got a second opinion, which is sleazy even for Frank, but is a funny joke.
Yeah. It's silly, sleazy for Frank, in my opinion. Frank was the Milwaukee Businessman of the Year.
Mm-hmm.
He was at least known for being decent to his employees, except for when he and Tony would have dust-ups over cooking matters.
Mm-hmm.
And that came off more like Frank cared about the quality of the pizza. And Tony just wanted to get them out faster, so you end up with half-cooked pizzas. And Laverne picking them up, and there was nothing there but dough.
Yeah, just like in her hands. Yep.
Yeah, blob of dough in her hands is stretching up. In this case, Frank has become a worse and worse employer as the season has gone on, which makes the series finale very weird. Because all of a sudden he cares about cowboy bills, when all evidence to the contrary indicates that he has not only become a terrible boss in California, to the point where he's like literally leaving Mary unaccounted for like a whole entire night, overnight in his bathroom,
Mm-hmm.
and is basically punishing his chef and refusing to let him go home when he's sick, so he can just throw up in the food or something.
Oh, and not to mention, we're coming up on Here Today, Hair Tomorrow. There's the bit about the split pea soup, and Rhonda asks, "Is it any good?" And he responds, "It's any good, Rhonda. It's Friday. We made the soup on Monday. You do the math." It's like he's. I mean, and
yeah.
So this is a health code violation kind of place at this point.
Yeah. At this point, Frank is basically torturing his employees and torturing his customers. And I know it's been a joke basically since they got to California. The food at Cowboy Bill's is not that great, and it's prepackaged. It went from season 6 him going, "The barbecue sauce comes out of a jar," to him going in season 7 that his customers in season 7 rebelling against him and saying the food tastes terrible, and everybody avoiding the infamous split pea soup even before what we see in season 8. To the point where he's committing health code violations and probably OSHA violations on top of that.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like a huge downfall for Frank. It's really bad.
Yep. And
my big note
go ahead
on Carmine's medical outfit is that Carmine should just give in and start stripping. At this point.
I mean, Eddie was in amazing shape during this year because you can see that he was trying to get into leading man shape, and it definitely. Yep. That also, just that alone as a concept would have been adorable to do as an episode. That Carmine tries to go be a stripper, and he's trying to justify it in different ways. But mind you, this season in particular, its relationship with sex and sex work and things like that probably better that it didn't do that. But but still, it's
great.
Great.
It's just been a mess.
So Squiggy comes in.
Yes.
And my mother immediately goes, "Oh my God, he's dressed like a normal person!" And she gasped out loud.
It's very fashionably Floridian. That's what Squiggy is at this point. I actually like these outfits that they put David in towards the end of canon, where he's just like having fun.
Mm.
At this point, he's coming in basically, entertaining himself. I've had friends like High Pax, saying that he's basically out there just enjoying himself because he knows this is a sinking ship. Yeah. And so he's just like riffing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I mean, you pointed out how there's like little ad libs as he comes in, and he's talking to was it Doris or Dolores or something, and
yeah. I was gonna say he actually says "silent but deadly."
Yes, that was interesting.
God. You get away with that.
And there's a lot of jokes that David gets away with in the next few episodes. We're gonna again. Yeah, I have them in my notes. We're coming to that.
Me too. So here we go. Squiggy tries to convince Carmine to date his sister for money when she's in town. He refuses to do it out of moral obligation. Frank says the singing telegram place is called, and it's time for him to go be a champagne ball on the docks. And suddenly Squiggy's money is good.
Right.
Yeah. You had to call a lawyer.
Oh yeah, okay. So the reason for that line, I have the line, is that so the jokes at Squendolyn's expense are one of the most disgusting things about this episode. And one of them, like, this is one of those in other circumstances and other comedy with different characters, this would be funny. When it's Squiggy, even this is a bit much. Something about, there's a remark about the animal shelter, and it's like, yeah, she stayed there for 3 weeks. Then they tried to put her to sleep. I had to call a lawyer. And
Yep. It's just like the way the narrative treats Squendolyn when David plays her with gentle dignity. He plays her, but very seriously and with very serious intent most of the time.
Yep.
Even though he does have his burlesque moments. But she has her moments of genteel dignity, even when she's saying she's on the pill. And even...
Hey, she's being honest.
Hey, I liked her. I actually like Squendolyn. I like Squendolyn a lot.
Mm-hmm. I did too.
Because she's very... Even if she's very slightly snobby, which Rhonda deserved, in a way...
Yeah.
After everything that she did over the course of the past 2 seasons to the girls. But Squendolyn is very bare bones honest. There's nothing really mean about her. She just wants somebody to love her.
Mm-hmm.
And Squiggy is very cruel to her, and I suppose that's learned behavior from their crappy childhood. Since she's his baby sister, so we don't know, if they're anything but half siblings, because she could very well be the result of his mother's numerous affairs with other men.
She does possibly, but she does clarify that they have the same father.
They have the same father, yeah. So either this actually is a result of their parents getting it on, or somebody dropped a baby on a doorstep, and they could tell by the squiggy curl.
Yeah,
and
it's like I think that's one of mine.
Yeah, I think it's one of mine. Oh, that's the birthmark. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. I'm glad you bring this up, because this is something that comes to mind multiple times for me. Is what was their mother like?
Terrible.
Yeah, and
terrible.
Wait, I'm curious how much of Squendolyn's behavior is learned from that experience.
Yeah,
and then how much? Because then it's like, are we then? I guess let me rephrase.
No.
Are we seeing a reenactment of the way Helmet treated Squiggy and Squendolyn's mom?
I absolutely think that's possible. In continuity that we've seen, and in alter continuity that David and Michael have worked with, basically Squiggy's mom was a vixen temptress type who was banging Lenny's dad. While Helmet was gone and Helmet had run away to go be a jerk. We know that she was emotionally abusive to him. We know she locked him in the closet when he didn't obey. We know that both of his parents vacated the premises at random times, leaving him to fend for himself when he was young. He was a latchkey kid. So all of this also happened to Squendolyn, presumably. So I can absolutely see her trying to reenact her mother's temptress behavior here. So it's actually very psychologically interesting if that was what David intended, and I'm not sure he did.
Yeah, and that's the catch, is that's why the humor of it, this is setting up humor and dark humor for what kind of needs like a very pathos heavy conclusion, and we don't get one. Yeah. That's what bugs me.
What this is really missing is a lot of scenes between Squendolyn and Squiggy. Somehow the blocking here is worse than it was in The Other Woman.
Yeah, amazingly.
When Cindy played Shirley and played Diana.
Yep.
And played 2 different characters. Somehow this is worse, even with all the body doubles involved. And it feels like there was a lot less of Squiggy in the episode deliberately, so David could concentrate on being Squendolyn. The problem is that results in a huge disconnect because the 2 characters are not interacting as they should and as 2 siblings might.
Right. Exactly.
So it's ridiculous in a lot of ways.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, it feels... Yeah, there is that strange dissonance. Like, you never really get to understand Squendolyn outside of this one, like, low relationship the way that we understood other interesting guest characters like The Other Woman, like Amy and The Silent Child, and things like that. Slow Child, excuse me. Sorry. I don't know why I keep calling her The Silent Child. Maybe I keep thinking that she should be in a Elliot Gould caper movie.
Or that she's very good at being quiet. Either or. So, ultimately, the disconnect is a kind of an issue here, because basically Squendolyn is off in the A-plot, dealing with her crush on Carmine, and dealing with what she thinks are rivals for his affection, and trying to cage advice from Laverne on the situation. while Squiggy basically pops in and out. He's off doing other things. God knows what he's doing.
At this point, with how much of a dick he is in this episode, I don't know if I want to know.
Yeah. The last few episodes he appears in, he's not a good person. That's not the best.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the Squiggy we like and know, basically.
It's almost as if, like, David kind of getting let off the leash a little bit. He's bringing Squiggy back to where Squiggy and Lenny started as being, funny, but, like, people you would never want to meet. Like, because there reaches a point of transition, I feel, with Lenny and Squiggy, where around, like, season 3, season 4, they start being kind of likable doofs that... Yeah. You would totally like having as neighbors. You'd like having as friends and people that are kind of in your friend circle or your community.
Yeah. I think I'd argue that starts happening around season 2. The transition happens right, I want to say, somewhere around High Neighbor Book 2, in Look For Your Leap. Somewhere around in that area where Lenny starts growing dimensions and starts
of course.
Being more of a sad-eyed sap.
Also in Lonely in the Middle. Good point.
Yes, Lonely in the Middle. Oh, and Squiggy starts showing that there's layers of vulnerability and a need for love and a need for tenderness and friendship underneath this tough exterior. So it starts being there very, very soon after we finish season 1. And to be fair, the dissonance in season 1 at least partially stems from the fact that they had that spinoff going on. They didn't know if the spinoff was going to get picked up. The boys were set to go be in the army, and they were going to basically be like their old school selves, to the point where Squiggy was going to be Anthony Squigliano again.
Oh, wow. Yeah, and the other thing also I find with season 1 of Laverne and Shirley compared to the way the series evolved, it kind of reminds me of what happened to Adventure Time. I know that's a very weird pull. Hear me out on this. The first season of Laverne and Shirley is pretty edgy for its time. And when you get to season 2, it kind of like they kind of smooth the edges off a little bit. So even though some of the content tackles some much more emotionally complex material, there's not that kind of bitter internal aftertaste that season 1 has regularly. Carmine dumps Shirley, and then that's it. She is dumped, and she's, she does not have a regular guy. And, that becomes a major part of season 1. And, and so does, Mother Knows Worst, those sort of aspects. And so that's, I guess what I mean is like that disconnect of or that shift you see where the boys are, wanting to throw to ovens and appliances out in the street, and when they're drunk and be, much more grabby hands and perverse and etc. You really see that tone down right away in season 2, and it reminded me of Adventure Time, because we watch Adventure Time, there's some episodes in that first season. Show does not get that intense and weird and horrifyingly nightmarish for another, 2 or 3 years. Yeah. Not really until the lemon grab episode, I would say. So. Yeah.
I think a lot of it stemmed from the show's immense popularity, which was happened right off the bat, and the fact that a lot of the kids are tuning in to see Lenny and Squiggy. And Gary Marshall being Gary Marshall, he looked at the Fonz and turned this leather jacket-wearing hood into a nice, responsible guy who wore glasses and took care of the kids and lectured you about smoking, how it ain't cool, and how you don't drink and drive. And that was not the guy he was in the first season of Happy Days.
Yeah.
And that's what Gary did, because I think he felt a responsibility to all these children tuning in to give them role models. So, yeah, I think that was part of it. I think that was part of it, and that was an intentional thing. I know they were apparently concerned that once the boys were getting too lovable, they were planning on importing other characters into the show, so the girls would have rivals. That's why, Rosie existed for a while. That's why Rhonda exists as she is in season 6, until she becomes more of a friend in season 7. Yeah, they were at least aware of what was going on. So, Laverne's suddenly incredibly busy at her job, for reasons we don't understand. She was whining about how boring it was and she hated it early in the season. And she and Squiggy have a talk, and Squiggy basically begs her to take Squendolyn in. We find out why the boys can't host her.
Yeah. Lenny's young. Huh. He dreams. Yeah. That's a...
I just right in my pants whenever you are next to me.
That's the first Lonely Island reference we've made in a long time, it feels like.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. They wrote that song about the
They totally did.
boy.
I do love though that our both of us had this note. It's like it's like I don't want to hear this. It's like Laverne, come on. You always like hearing about about the weird dirty gossip. Come on.
Yeah, usually Lenny's the one giving her the weird dirty gossip.
Exactly.
That's the thing. But he's not here because Michael is making a legend.
Exactly. Exactly.
And
but yeah,
yeah.
It's sad because I would have loved if it had been something else, like Lenny was away and
Yeah.
I can't have him stay because I have to talk with him on the phone because he's scared because he's like off like trying to do a deal in some other part of California for their movie or something.
Yeah. Yeah, or maybe he's in Milwaukee visiting his sister.
Totally.
You can do all kinds of different things with him.
Yep.
But instead he either sleep pumps or jizzes his pants. He has wet dreams. It's one or the other. Or the other.
Not to mention, I hate to say it, but with how crass and much of a dick Squiggy is, I cannot see that stopping him from having Squendolyn stay at his place.
And how much he frankly doesn't like his sister.
Exactly. So, anyway.
I wonder if the reason why he doesn't like Squendolyn is because Squendolyn actually has made it up into out of the blue collar level.
That's a good
socially.
Point. Yeah, she dresses lovely. So
yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, she is a buyer for a department store. That's a pretty big deal, especially in the 1960s.
Mm-hmm.
For a woman to have that kind of a role, and that pays very well. And so she's an independent career woman who's probably not white collar, not blue collar anymore. She's white collar.
Right.
So I wonder if part of it is he's jealous of her because he's been scrubbing at the bottom and trying to scramble up the ladder, and finally he's starting to do it as an agent, but it's not happening quickly enough. So I don't know. It's fascinating the way they chose to play this.
The follow-up, though, in this scene, though, as he's begging Laverne for this bit, is he says, he'll get you a date with the movie star, I got you a date with the movie star, and she responds, movie star, he did one commercial, Mr. Scrubby, the man who sings in the toilet bowl.
And all I could think of was More Than Friends.
Yep.
Where she played a character who sang in a toilet bowl.
On a lily pad, yep.
On a lily pad, yep, on a lily pad that dissolves and makes the water blue. I like that at least it seems like Laverne actually knows and kind of liked Squendolyn to the degree where she could go, hi, Squendolyn.
Yep.
But they didn't have anything in common at all.
Yeah.
So it's like the only thing we had in common was you.
Right, which it means it's like, it's not that I dislike this person, it's just I don't have anything to talk to about with them, which is fair. Yeah. I mean, that happens. Yeah. I still have many people in my social circle that are like that.
Yeah. And even when Laverne is like having to get up in the middle of the night and talk to Squendolyn about this, she's not mean to her at all. She's not rejecting of her at all. She's just annoyed and kind of wants to go back to sleep. So that's a very nice twist.
And yeah, exactly. She even does try to give advice, but she's not invested enough to really give her the best she can. And not to mention she's exhausted. Yeah. She wants to go to bed.
Yeah, poor girl.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So Eddie's wearing an extremely tight shirt as he comes in with Squendolyn's luggage.
Right. Yeah, that's good. That happens quite a bit, I noticed, through the last few episodes. And we get full bare-chested Eddie, I think, in the last episode.
Yes, we do. No, not the last episode.
That's right. Sorry. Yeah, because so we'll get to this when we get there. But for folks that don't know, the final episode, quote unquote, of Laverne and Shirley is either Councilman DeFazio or Here Today, Hair Tomorrow. Yeah. To me, Here Today, Hair Tomorrow is the final episode.
Yes,
it is the one that aired last, as according to IMDb, it aired on the 10th of May, and Councilman came first. And there's reasons this makes a lot of sense, but but depending on where you're watching it, what format, what episode listing, I think this may have changed its syndication. I don't know. It's a thing.
Yeah, on the DVD, and I'm streaming on Prime, because Laverne and Shirley is now streaming on Prime, even though it does not really have very much of an altered presence versus
like Pluto and places.
They have in Pluto, what they have going on in Pluto. But I think that's the order is Councilman DeFazio is last.
Yeah.
On Prime. And it's absolutely obvious that it's supposed to air before Hair Today, because otherwise it makes no sense. Because we'll get there, but we know one major reason why.
Anyway, so
yes.
So we get going to that, and Carmine asking why is she putting the stockings on her stockings on in the car, and is don't you know women? And I remember thinking, why is that funny? I don't get the joke. It's
I
like
know.
it then then sets up my first fuck you Carmine, which is him saying, "I should put the stockings over her face."
So assholey of him to say that. And then he wants to take her to an all-night bowling alley in Bakersfield.
Fuck you
So
Carmine.
nobody will see them.
My mother gasped at that remark because
Yeah.
she used to live in Bakersfield when she was a kid growing up, and yeah, she spent some time in Bakersfield, and she also like knew what Bakersfield in the '60s was like, and it's like that's a shithole. You don't take somebody there.
Oh dear. Oh man. Oh dear.
And then the
blame
bit
her.
about she's depressed on account of old man Arnie busted up with her, and it's like knew what he was doing. It's like fuck you Carmine. That's three in the span of less than 4 minutes.
Yeah. It's like, boy, this woman is such an awful dog. And in fact, David Lander continues to look good in drag. He continues to put himself admirably in drag. The only time he didn't do that was when they dressed him up as a woman in Bad Girls. And that was intentional because that was the boys trying to very hastily dress themselves up in drag to pretend to be semi-ladies to scare these girls. And that was convincing. But as Manuela in You Want to Be in Pictures, Born Too Late, wrong title. And here, he absolutely looks very pretty. And so Carmine looks like double the douche, basically.
Exactly.
By the way, okay, interesting note, as we get the hello gag that brings in Squendolyn, they asked David, would you care about having to do 2 hello gags in a single episode? And he said, I will treat this character with all the dignity she deserves. She's a separate character. I will do a hello gag for her.
That's very sweet.
I love that.
That's also very him.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, the way his mind worked was amazing. Yeah, I love the way David Lander's mind worked. I love that. But yes, we get a hello gag, and in comes Squendolyn, and she has that very Squiggy note of judgmentalness. Only she's more of a romantic, an outward romantic than him. His romanticism is kind of
very
undercover.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
quaint. Yeah, it's a New Jersey term. It means tacky. When you're an assistant buyer at Klein's on the square like I am, you get an eye for beauty.
That did make me laugh. The New Jersey term that means tacky. That does make me laugh. So, did you notice that there's a JFK bust sitting on the shelf for some reason behind them?
That's what that was. I remember seeing a bust back there, but I couldn't tell what the hell that was. It was like, okay, that's
JFK.
JFK.
Yeah. If your eyes drift in annoyance like mine did, yeah, you see that it's clearly JFK there too. I love Squendolyn saying that she's on the pill.
That was
Another woman, I'll make you forget.
Yeah. What do you have in mind? Another woman, I'll make you forget. Yep, that's a really good line.
I do like that too.
And there's the bit of Squig coming down and it's like, oh, you get along like 2 bats at a belfry, to which I'm just immediately brought back to Monastery Story and my Dark Souls jokes, and I just don't know if I even have it in me to do more Dark Souls jokes, even in a season 8 episode.
No more Monastery Story. No more.
Remember, I better get going because 2's company, 3's a felony, which that's got implications.
Oh, it's like that Man Act joke that they got away with in season 5.
Oh God,
Lord. Enter Rhonda, who is extra boobily in this particular episode. I wish I did not notice that. All respect to Leslie, but man, the girls are out there.
Yeah,
it's hard not to look at them during the scene.
Well, it's the belt. They used the belt to accentuate it visually, so they really just they made her tits look humongous.
Yeah. Look. All respect to her. She's an incredibly talented actress. The girls are great.
Leslie is gorgeous. There's some good. I mean, we get some good cleavage in another episode or two, but she is. Yeah. But I will say, Leslie Easterbrook is one of the most talented, underutilized actors I think I've ever seen now. Between having experienced her in this, loving her for years in Devil's Rejects, I just am like flabbergasted that she was the big busty blonde bimbo archetype off and on through the 80s and 90s. And it's like, man, she deserves so much more than that. She is cool.
Watch her in Police Academy. She kind of emerges from that a little.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Because I mean, I would just love her. Like when I think of like the Babalu Mandel Lowell Gans collaboration screenplays that have been written since Laverne and Shirley and Happy Days, she would have fit in some of those so well.
Oh yeah, definitely. And then she asks if Rhonda's acting right now. This is the real Rhonda.
Yes, this is the real Rhonda, which is probably another bosom joke as well. But given the personality of this episode, that was my thinking. But I do, but I do love her response. It's like, no, this is me. This is me who I am. Because that's one thing I've grown to love about Rhonda is that she's so honestly herself. And that honest self is also a lot more palatable than it was a couple seasons ago.
Yep. And she is trying to be sincerely kind because shockingly, she invites everybody in the building to come to this big fancy Hollywood party she's going to. Considering how strongly she used to gatekeep those kinds of affairs, it is very interesting that she's inviting everyone in here.
See, I would have loved that to have been something that they could have developed where she gets the part of the reason she hangs out with some of these people is because they actually understand her and are more interesting. Whereas, because, when you go to parties, man, if you're with the wrong crowd, you feel it. You really feel it.
Oh, yeah. We're going to talk about the wrong crowd very soon in this episode.
Yeah,
because
a little bit.
A certain someone resurfaces, yes.
But yeah, so this little throwaway line, by the way, in the middle of this exchange where she's inviting them and Carmine's trying to say, no, we can't go. We're going to go squeeze melons. Excuse me. That's what it is. And, so yeah. And my fourth fuck you, Carmine, comes in. Be there wearing bells. Bell around her neck.
Carmine, you've gone out with some dogs before, so be quiet, Be quiet.
I may not always say that every person is like super attractive to me or whatever, but I will never call them a dog. That's fucked. That still to me is fucked up.
Yeah. We just watched Marty, the movie Marty.
Oh yeah.
That kind of deals with this idea. There is a middle-aged butcher. I'm sure y'all have seen Marty before.
Yeah.
Who is very shy, and he has this very strong clique of friends and a relationship with his mom that's a little strong and a little limiting. And one day when they're out at a dance hall, he meets this very nice shy girl who's a little plain. And he's shocked at this girl, you're beautiful, he realizes. And she thinks he's handsome, and the two of them are kind of stunned, like, wow, wait, really?
Mm-hmm.
And then they have to beat back their a-hole friend's opinions and his mother's opinion to be together. And that's the kind of message that the show should have been delivering here.
Yep.
They try to deliver it at the end, and it does not ring.
It does not ring. Nope. Because part of also what it is like, so when I go work out at the gym, this will be a short story, I swear to God.
Mm-hmm.
There is a couple. I used to see the guy there on his own and total nerdy, like he looked like a guy out of Office Space. Lifts weights wearing khakis and sneakers,
Mm-hmm.
Then him and the missus start going there together, and they're one of those sort of nerdy couples that look very similar. Like, they're not the type of conventionally attractive people, but it's really cute to see them work out together.
Yeah.
Like that's the whole thing. It's all about the emotion.
Yeah.
So it's like oh, such a no, I never would.
Yeah.
Never about neither one of them. They're too good of people, And that's
exactly.
And that's the thing about Squendolyn is that I do appreciate in this episode what they do. They clearly are trying to posit that, Carmine's being a dick and he needs to lighten up but they're still making fun of Squendolyn and making the joke at her expense, which I find unfortunate because Squendolyn immediately kind of tries to ingratiate herself as a sweet, sincere, character to the audience.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. That is the ultimate thing. Ultimately, Squendolyn is a nice, appealing person. In spite of, some of her flaws, like she does the kissy stuff like Squiggy. She is very blunt, but she's not the worst character this show has ever seen. We have survived Biff.
Yeah.
We have survived Rusty Grogan.
Yeah.
Enough. So here comes Laverne and Squendolyn's girl talk.
Mm-hmm.
I loved it. Took love and shoved it up my heart. I don't know how David got that one.
Euphemism.
Yeah, I don't know how David got that by the censor.
He is having way too much fun being dirty as hell in this episode.
Oh yeah. And you'll notice that Laverne has a nice, perfectly decently sized single bed here.
It's very cute.
So that makes eventual plots that happen at the end of the season make no sense. I will say that.
Yeah.
And were you both in the same room when he asked? Because she knows Carmine, what he's like. As she does actually say here.
Mm-hmm.
What do you know about him? Everything?
Not like that.
Not that. The fact that she had been reading Shirley's diary the whole time.
It's very cute.
That's fun.
And I think what it is as we discussed before, she had finally decoded it. And I have a suspicion she may have asked Carmine for like a tip about like, so it's like, so I heard about blankety blank, blankety blank. And he goes, oh no. And innocently, Carmine goes, oh no, we just did blankety blank, blankety blank. And that's when she starts to figure out what the code is.
Yeah, and by mistake. And then she doesn't speak to him for a while.
Right. But I will say that I don't know necessarily to what extent Shirley saying in Shirley's journal it's saying that he was a sucker for seduction. I find it interesting that with Carmine and Shirley's relationship, there's a strange element that she's the gal he can't have because he can get tons of different girls, and like you realize especially like even with like the reunion episode and etc. that this is a guy that like he could pull, he could totally get whatever gal he wanted. And I think because the fact Shirley was the one that said no, that was part of what made her attractive to him. And I think he really kind of loved her. And I think he also loved the challenge of that too.
Yeah.
And so I will say that, I don't necessarily, know how much, it's like he's a sucker for seduction because, the seduction I think works for him in the temporary, but what really he's a character that I think here we're seeing there is the difference between the heart and what's between the legs. You know?
Yeah, exactly. And that sometimes results in disconnect, and not everything always connects between brain and body, so to speak. I loved that Squendolyn taught Squiggy the kissy thing.
Right.
That's funny.
That's funny. That is really funny.
It is.
Which again, that's another one that's like, oh god, what did their mom do?
Oh yeah. Don't think too hard about it.
Oy.
Don't think too hard about it.
Well, I won't because then Laverne teaches her new friend the spicy, sexy Shirley shimmy.
I love it. And Squendolyn quits herself pretty well. In spite of herself.
Yep. Hey, she takes to it better than Carmine's going to take to the cool walk pretty soon.
Yeah. Indeed, the cool walk. By the way, the start of the party scene is my first anti-Carmine note, in which I simply say, Carmine, you fucking dick sneeze.
Why did we have to wait in the car for 3 hours outside the house? Squendy Wendy was all lonely in the back seat. Yeah, that's my fuck you. That's number 5, by the way, for me.
Yeah. Poor Squendy Wendy.
We also talked about this, by the way, the Rich Place exterior, whether it was the house that John Saxon lived in at the beginning of Mitchell.
Yeah, it looks like it's the same thing. It absolutely looks like the same thing. Oh my goodness. Love that ultimately Squendolyn does not look worse than anybody else at this place. So I don't know why Carmine is being such a douche. Mm-hmm. Again, I will call him a douche in this one.
Absolutely. Also the fact that the women are not period accurate really got on my nerves. In terms of dress, the hair is hard because they have the 80s haircuts, which you can't do outside of wigs. There's not much you can do about that.
Yep. My actual note is everyone's dressed like a 1980s hooker in this party.
I mean, this is like what do you call it? Like an Andrew Stevens or Andy Sedaris kind of sort of joint, or a Sirio Santiago movie.
Yeah, and she's an acrobat, Ted.
Oh my god,
that kind of feeling.
Yep.
Absolutely that kind of feeling. And then all of a sudden, all these girls start coming up to Carmine, and my note is, did someone spike this punch with aphrodisiac?
That was my thing, is thinking was like, it's for some reason, it's the same kind of dumb joke writing that reminds me of the those ad-lib bits with Anthony Anderson and Tom Arnold at the end of those action movies? Where like there's a bit where the two of them get in this conversation. They're talking about why isn't there a Viagra for women? Yeah, it's got to have equal opportunity. Yeah, they'll call it Niagara. It's like okay, that was my thought when you mentioned the aphrodisiac. Is like they put Niagara in the punch.
Yeah, that's absolutely what it feels like. Because, Lord, every single woman suddenly wants to bone Carmine, and a show of the universe trying to pee on him.
Yeah, basically.
And good on the universe because he deserves it at this point. He absolutely deserves to be peed on by the universe because he's treating her poorly for what basically becomes no real reason.
Yeah, my note here is about this whole setup is we can take turns. You look like you have lots of stamina. My note is, Jesus, I bet that sold the promos well.
Yeah. Yeah. Oy vey. Oy vey. Oy vey.
And my follow-up note is, can you please leave? I don't want you to see me cry. It's like, yeah, do it, you fuck. Cry as a river so we can laugh, you fuck.
Cry a river, cry a river. I love that Ron and Squendolyn have become fast friends.
Oh, that is so cute. That's one of my favorite moments in this whole scene, yeah.
Yeah. I love it. So like, they're really, really friendly with each other. They really enjoy each other. And enter freaking Willie Marsh of all people.
I hated that. I was like, why are you here? Go away.
It kind of explains why Rhonda would be at this kind of a party and why it's as sleazy as it is. Because I feel like all these women are trying to make it with Carmine and make it with Squiggy because they think they're someone in the movie industry, and they're not. And of course, if they're at a Willie Marsh kind of party, then of course they think, if they're snowed by Willie Marsh being somebody in the movies, then of course they're going to be snowed by the idea that the two of them are in the movies. And we do find out that he actually does produce actual B movies, actual shitty drive-in movies, and the Rhonda was in one.
Yeah, Car of Slime. And so I'm going to have to double-check the episode, but there's that bit about Slime Hop, I think. And I can't remember if that was referring to her character name or if it was referring to, let's see.
I think it was referring to her character.
Weren't you a slime hop? Okay, that's the line. I was concerned that Slime Hop was the name of another movie, and that because my note was "fuck you" show they didn't have numbered sequels until the 70s and 80s. So thankfully that was actually accurate. That she was number 1 on the cast listing, which is better. Anyway, sorry about that. Anyway, distraction over. Used to date also the exchange of Rhonda saying, we used to date the same Swami who slept on the nails.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I kind of like this career path for Rhonda, that she's out there, at least out there doing B movies or something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then Carmine pours cold water over himself and goes, I thought those days were over when Shirley got married.
That's my 7th fuck you, Carmine. My 6th was the pigs in a blanket bit.
God almighty, that was so terrible. All of these poor, beautiful women. Throwing yourself at Eddie Mecca is at least fun. Throwing yourself at this version of Carmine, no.
No. Ladies, you can do better. Just go have fun with each other. You'll be fine. You'll have a much better time.
Yeah. At least you'll be able to find certain things on each other's anatomy that Carmine probably can't.
Hey-oh. Oh, that's staying in the pod. That's for damn sure.
Poor Carmine.
And now the waiter goes on, and then the waiter goes off to bone Tanya and Terry. Oy.
Yep. Poor Tanya and Terry. Stuck. I swear to God, it's like everybody's behaving in a silly, horny way. Everyone is so horny, even for the show, even for a bunch of characters I've never seen before, we'll never see again. There are people just randomly having 3-ways, and it is only 1967. We're not even at the Summer of Love yet. It's like we're not even at free love quite yet.
Yeah, we're still off a little bit, but
yeah.
Oh man, what a scene, right?
Yep. Oy vey. Oh, and when Carmine asks God why God is torturing him, I bet you every Evil Dead fan knows what my note is. It's a Bruce Campbell commentary joke because you're so stupid, Carmine.
Okay. I haven't listened to the commentaries in full yet.
You haven't listened to the one on not the Criterion disc, the one that's I think Shout Factory. It's the same commentary disc.
I don't actually own any of those.
Gasp. It's when Ash yells, "Why are you torturing me like this, you bastards? Why?" And then Bruce goes, "Because you're so stupid."
Anyway, so before Fuck You Carmine number 8, you get to see Squiggy, if you're lucky, you get a tip. That's either... What I don't like about that is that's either a hand job, blowjob joke, or at worst is a transphobic joke.
I don't think it was a transphobic joke. I think it was kind of blowjob, hand job joke because There are many hand job jokes in this season for some reason.
That's a
And
good
there's
point.
another one coming up with Councilman DeFazio. It's like, well,
That's true.
okay.
Yeah.
We're just throwing caution to the wind.
Anyway, so my fuck you Carmine number 8 comes in when finally Carmine breaks and he dances with somebody else because he knows he's not going to get the other $200 off Squiggy, which is many levels of fucked up. And that's pretty bad.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a terrible person at this point in this episode. He's a terrible person. He has given up and has become a douchebag, and he is not likable nor is he enjoyable at this point.
And that's right, you do deserve to stand there and be shamed by David Lander once again, getting a kick-ass monologue, now for Squendolyn.
Yes, he does. Crazy in love! She just absolutely goes in on it. Yes, we know, what a family after the millionth time.
And I love it starts choking Carmine with the tie by accident, and Eddie is trying not to crack.
Yeah. There are several moments where Eddie almost does crack up during this episode, and you can tell that David is ad-libbing simply from that alone, because he almost loses it. He absolutely almost loses it several times. Yep. It's great. Penny does a better job. Penny almost cracks at something else, like deeper in the last set of episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's great. And thus, Gwendolyn's heart is broken, but not as broken as it will be when they get home later on.
Yeah.
Sadly. I have to point out, when we're talking about all these handjob, blowjob jokes, Commander Whitehead.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. I think David just gave up trying to please anybody and was just throwing the sex jokes in far and wide.
Yeah.
I think,
The ship was sinking. He figured he might as well fire off the cannons while he still could.
Yeah, Michael's not coming back. He's stuck here and unable to launch his film career, so he thought, sadly, at that point in time, he was waiting to, go do Conan, the Destroyer, and be a big supporting movie star. And so he has to just, mill his way through this BS last season of the show. And so he's just giving up and throwing everything willy-nilly against the wall to see what sticks and what the censors take out and what they don't take out. And they didn't take out a lot of this, to my amazement.
To my amazement as well. Yeah, I mean, even for 1983, this is quite a bit,
Oh, yeah.
All right, so we get to the conclusion, or kind of the big sort of climax of the scene of the episode, and Squiggy finally, it's like, what is this? I gave you $100 to take her out, didn't I? You're gonna charge me for double time for talking to her? And
poor Squendolyn. The way David handles this, and the way he gently delivers the line that perhaps he won't, step. What was the line? I know you have to have written it down. Perhaps I won't.
I don't actually have the one written down. I have the thank you for pitying me. It's not you I'm cross with. It's a brother of mine. Maybe, my brother tells me you're quite a crooner. It's the only other one I have.
Darn it. I did, and then, Carmine realizes he's being a dick.
Yep.
And he apologizes, and even though he doesn't really mean it, it kind of reminds me of Laverne in season 1 being unable to get to completely say that the boys are human beings. It feels very unevolved in a way.
It does. That's why this feels like a season 2 or 3 episode that hasn't that somehow got plucked into a later period. It got, out of time.
Yep, out of space and out of time. It has been unfrozen like a caveman lawyer.
Caveman lawyer, bonking things with his club.
Wearing sexy mini skirts and being self-reliant.
So I still have the episode on here. Let me see if I can track down the line you're thinking about.
I was totally blanking on it.
So the main thing that I do at least have notes of, and a quick skim was able to remind me of, is the perhaps I can move to LA, or basically Squendolyn wants to spend more time with Carmine, and there's an element of obviously reluctance and things like that. But it's interesting that he doesn't slam the door in her face, which does feel like growth.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and they kind of have a banter about it. I'll fly with the windows open.
Mm-hmm.
And all that stuff, and him kind of joking about it. So perhaps they will stay in friendly touch and be friends, because she doesn't need more friends. She's out there licking her wounds with her brother who won't speak to her, basically. So in this tag scene that comes up, so we learn that Carmine's a leg guy. So that explains everything with Shirley.
Mm-hmm.
Why he didn't care her boobs weren't real for all those seasons. Laverne desperately tries to convince us that this is a sign of maturity from him.
Mm-hmm. You've gone from Big Ragoo to Mr. Ragoo. I kind of like that, but it makes me sound like Mr. Magoo.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. And then in comes Squiggy with two women, and he hears all this spiel. And he turns to the women and say, "This is gonna be our other date," but he thinks her insides are ugly. Oh God. So yeah, and of course Carmine tries to pant after them, and then Laverne cock blocks him, and thus does the episode end. Please give me your thoughts on that.
Another boring, dull downer.
Okay. I did laugh at Squendolyn having a separate Chiron at the end of the season, at the end of the episode. Man, yeah. This episode isn't the best, worst episode of the season, isn't the best episode of the season, but God, for the way Carmine is and the way Squiggy is in this episode is what drags it down.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
If there had been a real confrontation between Squig and Squendolyn, perhaps it would have been better. If Carmine hadn't been a jerk to her right from the start, perhaps it would have been better. I mean, for heaven's sake, the guy is paying you to go out with his sister. You can bite your lip and at least be nice to her and think about how things were back in high school when she was this little kid that they used to hang around. At least have some kind of fondness for her.
And this is a woman who essentially is in a rebound situation. She just got dumped. And you're going to treat... I mean, that is kicking a wounded puppy at that point. Like, that's low.
Yep. So this makes Carmine look like a dick, and God is right to punish him.
Yeah.
I'm glad he ends up sleeping in the master bedroom. Anyway.
My mother's note here was that, like, the lack of other characters to bounce off of tries to make it was not able to make it into more of a learning thing because you don't have other characters to reflect the right or wrong behavior that Carmine needs to have. And so you don't get that for the main character of the episode, and you don't get it for Squendolyn, the subject of the episode. It, where she's able to, as you're saying, like, I completely agree that Squendolyn needed to confront her brother and say, that's pretty low. Like, I thought you'd gone to California and met. Like, when you talked about Dad, I thought you'd grown up a little bit. And realizing that, you're and actually having her give him the business and say you're still the same, crass little boy, fooling around the bathtub, is I think a deserved bit of carnage on him.
Yeah. He needed that.
But yeah, I don't know. It feels disappointing to me because it doesn't have the energy and love and verve that a lot of Roger Garrett's other episodes have. Because I don't know if there was like a falling out backstage where like his script didn't gel for David and Eddie, or there was something else holding it back. But possibly. I don't know if it was heavily rewritten because of the lack of Lenny. But
I
don't know.
Yeah, imagine what this episode would be like if Lenny was being paid to take out Squendolyn.
That would be so much cuter.
Yeah, and he'd be running himself ragged trying to please her, and she'd be impossible. Something like that.
Yeah, and he would be being driven nuts, and then Carmine having to be the one of like, not saying stand up and be a man, but also like, you deserve to have yourself respected, like that would make Carmine less of a dick. But anyway.
If this is an episode that desperately does need Lenny and Shirley in it.
Absolutely.
Because it would be an entirely different episode with the two of them in it. But instead we're stuck with this. Whoa.
Oh, woe is us. I mean, okay, because so
indeed.
I'm done with the notes. So all I have is just the actor, director, writer stuff, or writer and actor stuff. So, what are your kind of like? Do you have any other final thoughts? I guess.
My ultimate thought on this one is that it needs to make Squendolyn more rounded out. She is more rounded out than several supporting characters have been. But there needs to be more of her, and there needs to be more of a natural reaction between Squiggy and Squendolyn, which I said before. It feels like Laverne and Squendolyn know each other. And they're the only two characters that really do feel like they knew each other during this thing. Squiggy acts dismissively. Carmine acts as if she's some kind of repulsive stranger, even though he would have known her. And ultimately, the end game is that the only person who's acting properly and in an in-character manner that they would behave in a season 8 worthy in-character manner is Laverne. And that's so sad. This could have been a great episode, but it doesn't end up being a great episode. And it's very much stymied because of those things.
Yeah, perfectly. I very much feel the same way. It's a very frustrating one, and it's why I was more disappointed than I was just outright hating it. It just felt like this could have been great, and it just sort of falls short. It's one that can be fixed, but they didn't fix it. So
Yeah. All it needed was, it either needs to actually be a week where Michael was there, and needed to be a Lenny and Squiggy episode, or it needed to be more thoughtful when it came to his relationship with his sister.
Yeah.
Because it ends up being more about Carmine and her trying to hash out this relationship, and it tries to be a growth moment for Carmine, even though he was never this devolved as a person. You know, it's just unfortunate. It's not the worst thing in the season, but it's not the best thing in the season. Is all I gotta say.
Yeah, because going into the behind the camera notes, I mean, this, as we said, as you pointed out, it is the final episode from Roger Garrett, and he had done 10 prior to this one. At least was credited as a writer. And he had served as a story consultant, story editor for 33 episodes from season 3 or 4 up to now. And this is a guy who had been responsible for, I mean, both hilarity, heartbreak. He gave us White of the Fireman, Survival Test, Born Too Late, Life is the Tar Pits, and Helmet Weekend. Like,
Wow.
this is a guy that we know he can do better. That's why I'm so disappointed.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. What else can you say? Because he has this huge, thick resume behind him.
Mm-hmm.
And he produces this.
Yep.
And it's just like, it's frustrating as hell.
Like, as far as we can tell, he seems to be retired at this point, but it's interesting looking that, like, he got a start on Blind Sleeps Beauties, Who's Watching the Kids, as well as obviously the first credited writing gig on Laverne and Shirley for season 2. He worked on Clip Show, Anniversary Show, wraparounds. And he eventually had multiple Happy Days episodes under his belt and would end up going to work on, like, It's a Living, also with Mark Sotkin in the mid-'80s for, like, 21 episodes, do, like, a handful of Empty Nest episodes, an episode of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, kind of stay busy in sitcoms and, like, a little bit of drama up until, like, 2003. So it feels very... Yeah, it's just, this is a weird... this is going to become, for the end of the season, and the end of the show, sort of a telling sign of that sort of, and that's it question mark feeling.
Yeah. Is that all there is?
Yeah.
Is that all there is?
So anyway, I've got 4 actors to discuss. So I think you mentioned before that there's one of them who's a soap opera actor.
Yes, Bobby Eakes.
And she was not listed, I think, on the credits, but so I didn't have full notes on her. But so we have Janine Ford plays Terry. She was a former Miss Arizona USA contestant. But the cool thing about her popping up here, I thought this was very cute. So she did try the acting thing, ended up having but it didn't really work out as an actor. She became successful as a broadcast anchor and was even inducted into the Arizona Broadcasters Association Hall of Fame in 2016.
Wow. So,
like, she was very prestigious and beloved as a broadcast anchor. It's not the last time, by the way, for the next few episodes, we're going to mention a weird offshoot like that takes place.
It's really cool.
But in addition to this part, she also had guest spots on, like, Remington Steele, Dukes of Hazzard, Falcon Crest, which is also going to come up a bunch, and Benson. Then there's Catherine Gilmore as Patty. Mostly was a model, did some acting gigs in the 80s, including spots on, like, 8 is Enough, Happy Days, Amazing Stories. Also in Night Shift, which, again, comes up a lot. Night Shift has actually been coming up a lot since the very first season of the show, so I'm not surprised. But cool trivia about Catherine Gilmore, she is still apparently modeling, and her agency has her listed when you Google for her. So that's very cool.
That is neat. That's super neat. I think it's really cool.
And we have the Ivana Moore as Sheila, a working actor, late 70s to the late 80s. She got her start as a teacher in Revenge of the Cheerleaders, which is a good old-fashioned drive-in programmer from the 70s. Followed it up with a role in Black Market Baby in 1977, and a guest spot on Three's Company. She kind of, like, pops up here and there, and like They Call Me Bruce, jokes my folks never told me. So a lot of like kind of sex comedies and romps and stuff of that era. She pops into this episode before a few appearances in the 80s, and her final role is uncredited, but she did voice a character on The Real Ghostbusters in 1987.
Yay, Real Ghostbusters!
I was waiting for your enthusiasm there.
I grew up on that show, so yes.
Anyway, we then have Kelby Nugent as Judy, another recent addition to the Hollywood scene at this time. She was uncredited as the handball employee in Woody Allen's Manhattan prior to this. I apologize for the Woody Allen jump scare. After a walk-on here, she pops up in the A-Team, Cut Her to Houston, episode of Riptide, which Janine Ford also was on a different episode of the same show. Hardcastle McCormick, Stingray, LA Law, and lastly it shows up. Now, this is the funny thing. Kelby Nugent, the gal was in this episode. Lastly shows up in all things, in Titanic.
No way. Were they playing Titanic?
It's a very small part. It's I'm assuming it's like one of the folks, one of the upper class cars, and that's kind of it. If I recall, her character is named, so she may have some dialogue. So it might be like one of the people at one of the luncheons that take place in the middle of the first and second act. But since Titanic looks like she's retired, so that's it. Now, last one. This is the gal that is with Squiggy on camera left is Kim Ryusaki. She's uncredited, but this was an interesting rabbit hole to jump down. And this is why it's I wish I could give this higher notes, because this character's association changes my perspective of season 8 and the loss of opportunity here.
Oh.
This is a touch of behind the camera greatness, because Kim Ryusaki did a bit of acting throughout the 1980s, mostly walk-ons, extras, little bit parts. So she's on one of the deck crews in Star Trek 2. She's in Happy Days, Weird Science, even an episode of Cheers. But around the mid-80s, she jumps into doing stunt work because her father was a longtime prolific stuntman as well, which is where she gets that background from. Her father was even one of the Wing Kong hatchet men in Big Trouble in Little China, by the way. So for Kim herself, she goes on to do stunts starting with The Golden Child, then Nightmare on Elm Street 4, which is another connection to that one, Brian Yuzna's seminal Guyver film.
Whoa! Brian Yuzna!
Exactly. And the Guyver, the Mark Hamill one, not the second one. She even did stunts for the Skip Woods neo-noir Thursday. And I know which part that is because there's only like 2 or 3 female characters in that film. Thursday's interesting. It's a fun one to bring up. Anyway, as well, this gal also did some costume work on direct-to-video flicks in the 90s, a job that she even just recently did on a short film in 2002. Further trivia, like this being a Hollywood family, her dad does stunts since like the 60s. She does acting a bit of stunts in the 80s and 90s. Her daughter also does stunts and costume work, including on Pirates of the Caribbean 4 in 2011.
That's really cool.
So
that's neat.
So at the very least, we have that. But
I think that's neat.
Yeah. I think it's really cool, but I was like, this is why I mentioned this to, I think either to you or to our National Night Discord group, that like this makes me think of like, we could have had a pre-Bruce Lee joke about another martial arts actor that Squiggy's trying to get for talent. And that could have been an episode. And, making fun of how American television and movies would throw in the karate expert in their stuff, after like they reference You Only Live Twice, which is the Japanese one. So, or the Japanese Bond film for folks that don't know what all the titles of all the James Bond movies are. And I'm one of those people that can actually name all the James Bond films in chronological order. So there you go. Anyway, I'm getting distracted. I'm completely out of stuff.
It's okay. It's 100% okay. We're almost at ranking time.
It is ranking time. What are you giving this one?
Ooh. 4 because of David Lander's performance, and I got a couple of chuckles out of it. Carmine's behavior makes this a no-go, in spite of Eddie's acting here. And Squiggy's cruelty makes it a no-go, and ergo.
Ergo, no-go.
Just nose down the block.
Yep, I'm going to say a 4 as well. I mean, it's kind of cool to have some of these actors in there, and I really like David's, little banter moments, but yeah, it is a disappointing final note for Roger Garrett as a writer to go out on for this show, and I'm bummed by that. And this really, I mean, when we watched these episodes, I was pretty depressed anyway, and I was having a really shitty day, like an absolutely awful, like historically bad day. And so I know that clouded my judgment a bit, but even still, when I rewatched this later, like even my mother was just like heartbroken when she realizes as we're listening to the theme song, she realizes none of their dreams came true. Laverne and Shirley's dream, no, that's
not true. Shirley's dream did come true. She married a doctor. She fell in love. Basically, I'm going to address this more when we get to Hair Today, Gone Tomorrow, or I think Hair Today, Gone Tomorrow. Basically, everyone's dreams do come true to a degree, except for Laverne and Lenny's. And that's what's sad. That's what's sad. Everybody else has improved their station in life, their relationships, their careers, in some degree, except for Laverne and Lenny. And that's the saddest part of it.
Oh, because they didn't end up together.
No, I didn't even need that. I just needed Laverne to be happy in the universe.
I know. I'm teasing, but to be fair, that would have actually have made an interesting two-parter. That ends up actually being what resolves both of their struggles in life. Is that they become, building off of the great growth of those two characters. That the conclusion brings them together in a way that is like, kind of romantic, but also it's a romantic friendship, basically. Like it really pushes that element forward. Anyway,
that honestly would have been a great way to end the season and end the series, because at that point, they were coming back. Penny knew they weren't going to move the series to New York, so they just should have given them that kind of an ending, and Michael could have gone do it and done his thing, and she could have gone and done her thing, and Laverne could have been happy in a sensible way that made sense for the rest of canon. But I don't necessarily need a ship pusher. I would have been just as happy if she had ended up with Mike.
I would too.
Because Mike was a good character. Mike was a good character that was a healthy relationship for her. And tragically, that didn't happen because of Larry Brooding's passing. So
yeah. No, I honestly, there are parts of Mike in that episode in Fashion Show that are like what I've tried to be as a boyfriend. Like, there are aspects of the ideal in his behavior and the way he treats and the way he's so sincere and warm-hearted. So yeah. Anyway, sorry to get tangent, folks. We've been talking about this episode for quite a bit, so I think our brains are my brain is starting to melt a little bit.
Your poor brain. They'll come back. I was going to say that ultimately the problem here is that they didn't really plan on this being the end of the show. If things had gone to season 9, probably what would have happened is everybody would have moved to New York, and we would have had Carmine and Rick. We would have had Carmine and Rick there, and Laverne would have been there, and maybe Rhonda, maybe Squiggy, maybe Frank, because there's a lot of kind of like setting up where that might have been possible.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that. Actually, to an extent, we're even gonna get a little bit of setup of that in this next episode that we're gonna do.
Yeah.
But
exactly.
Anyway.
Yeah, that should have been that. The next episode definitely should have been used as a building block for the episode that comes after it, is all I'm going to say. But we'll get there. We're tangenting.
Yeah, we're tangenting.
So
we did this as a block in this group of 4 episodes that we're doing to cap this off. Is they all kind of have this weird like congealing effect together. So, or maybe congealing is the wrong word. They sort of, they're different funky, stinky, goopy bits kind of go thunk onto each other, like the way that trash in a heap just kind of molds together a little bit.
Yeah.
Man, that sounded really bleak. I heavily apologize. I was mostly just thinking of the line, the verse about until it molds and congeals, which is a bit from Garbage Strike the Musical. Anyway.
Oh man, with little peels and stuff. Rocco's Modern Life.
Yep, and the favorite bit is Heifer then going, "The book was better." All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for Night After Night. And if you would like to know more, you can find us at Night After Night PC on Twitter or Night After Night Pod on Facebook, Tumblr, WordPress, Patreon, or YouTube, or wherever good podcasts may be found. Thank you so much for joining us, as always. And Lisa, my darling, it's a kind of a weird dance you're doing. What are you dancing over there?
Carmine Ragusa dance craze. Carmine Ragusa dance craze. Carmine Ragusa dance craze!
Ah, God. Oh, God. Oh, God. No. Oh, God.
This is due to Carmine.
Yeah. No, I got nothing. I'll save it for the episode.
Bye, y'all, and if you have to dress up like a champagne bottle, be sure to bring your own shoulder pads. Do not let the costume people put your shoulder pads in, or they'll turn out crooked or lumpy. Bye.